This is the Unscripted Podcast. Foreign countries, gator hunting, and playing basketball in wheelchairs.
beating wheelchair bound guys.
It only happens in this podcast.
Yeah, I know it. So how do we want to break this up?
Well, first of all, we need to get Ben on here.
Yeah,
and we need to have an exclusive interview.
Yeah,
only right here.
The big thing is that we the mics in the cabinet.
The big thing is that Ben played a guy in basketball in a wheelchair, and decided to beat him.
Well, what's even worse
I can explain myself.
What's even worse, Bob, is we're trying our best to teach this guy the gospel.
Yeah, he hadn't been back to church since.
I know, and
Ben's like, it's all for evangelism.
Paul said, "I become all things to all men in order that I might save some."
Yeah.
I think that probably, Ben...
I got to defend myself.
Yes, come on here. Ben was so ready to defend himself for so long. He'd been so upset, Chris, because we've been talking about him on here.
Yeah, I needed to...
But Chris, I understand that, Chris, you hooked Ben up with... well, we'll talk about that in a minute, too.
All right, so
Ben, explain yourself.
Talk about that one.
Ben, explain yourself.
So, here's the deal about it. If we're gonna play, I mean, this guy, he's
in a wheelchair.
Okay, he is in a wheelchair.
Okay, he is in. Ben was gonna leave that part out.
Constantly.
Yeah. Okay.
The poor guy's paralyzed.
But I was trying to connect with him. He moved down to Hattiesburg.
So you trash him in basketball.
Well, he moved down to Hattiesburg to play.
There's a whole lot of stuttering going on, Ben. When people start stuttering, let me tell you, I'm not a cop. Bob was a cop, but I'm telling you, I know how lies are made up.
Well, you got to let me explain myself, okay?
Okay,
right.
let's hear
So
it.
we're down
from the start.
Okay.
This is kind of like Acts 11,
right,
where the Jews were
Peter's
talking to Peter.
I'm trying to tell the
you
story
went in
here.
uncircumcised.
I'm trying to tell the story.
All right,
here,
go ahead.
Okay, so let me explain myself.
So he moves here.
He needs to get a haircut.
Right.
So he goes to Don's barbershop. Mm-hmm. Gets a haircut from Don. Don,
talking to you, Mike. Good.
He's really trying to be evangelistic. So he tells him about the church. We actually set up a study with him. But he moved down here. This guy moved down here to play wheelchair basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And
I didn't even know that there was a wheelchair league in Hattiesburg. Did you?
No, I didn't.
I haven't seen it advertised or.
I didn't know it either.
One more reason to move to Hattiesburg.
Right.
You can get it all here.
That's right.
And so I invite him. I'm like, hey man, you want to play wheelchair basketball? I was trying to connect with him.
Right.
Do you know the rules of wheelchair basketball?
No. I mean, it's pretty simple. You can't dribble it.
You'll never get called for double dribbling.
You can't stand up. I mean, it's a rule. If Ben would have stood up, he would have been in trouble.
What would that be? A foul?
I guess so.
Do you
it
get
wouldn't
the
be
free
a travel.
That would have been walking.
Well, if he's in the 3-point line, do you get 3 then, or how does it work? Do you know?
Hey man, I don't know.
No. It would have been walking.
Well, I guess so.
I mean, that's a walk, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So they don't call. Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. The ref, he blows the whistle. Mm-hmm. Traveling,
I've only
walking.
played one time, Bob.
Okay.
I've only played one time.
Yeah,
no, I'm talking about real basketball.
Because you beat him.
I wasn't going to let him beat me.
What do you mean? What's wrong with him letting you beat you? Let me explain something.
He plays wheelchair basketball, I guess semi-professionally. So it's like, okay, I got a wheelchair. We got out in the parking lot. We started playing basketball. And I wasn't going to lose.
They wheeled out this old wheelchair that Ben had cobwebs on it, and
it was fun
from the bus barn or wherever storage here at the church.
So you don't feel bad about that at all?
No. You play to win.
When did you beat him?
It was probably about a month ago.
I know. Has he been back to church since?
No, but we've invited him. I picked him up this morning. Went to took him to work.
Okay. All right. Well, that's better.
Well, I will say this, that we did study together one time after this.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So after I beat him, he came to Bible study,
Humbled him.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Submission.
But he just got back on the team in Hattiesburg, and so I'm going to go to one of his games.
Yeah, no, we love him. We just wanted to trash you, Ben.
Yeah, that was all about you,
Yeah,
Ben.
that was the... I just had to get on the mic and defend myself today, Y'all saying I'm beating cripples out here,
Well, you were.
Yeah, it just doesn't sound good when you say it.
Ben, here, take my chair. You can just stay on here today. So let's ask Chris questions about Honduras.
So Chris, what'd you do? What'd you do in Honduras today or last week?
Well, it was just the whole idea of the week was that we were going to preach the gospel. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me. I mean, that's a pretty broad brush. It was.
Well, Chris, we're trying to
so what was the what was the mission? Like, what were you trying to get accomplished? Who all did you take? Just give us kind of the rundown, an overall picture of what happened last week.
Well, we took a bunch of folks from the audio on this is going to sound crazy. I mean, like, it's just beating and banging around the whole time. But
well, if you would have been talking the whole time, they wouldn't have heard all that.
Well, Bob, it sounds like a marauding band of pirates in the background.
So first of all, did you have to wear a mask on the plane?
No.
Check. That was a great first experience.
And let me just tell you this, that
Go ahead.
Tell us.
Diplomatically, it was
diplomatically.
There was a strong push towards wanting us to wear them everywhere in the country.
Oh,
and
so why is that? Are they just kind of behind the curve on the COVID stuff?
Yeah, when I was down there in May, I mean, it was just crazy. And I mean, I don't know how it is in the big cities in America because I didn't go to any of the big cities during the COVID foolishness, but I know that I went into one place down there, and like a bunch of places were like this, but one place in particular, like I wanted to go somewhere where I could watch the ball. This was during March Madness, and so I was going to watch the Final Four game with Duke and Carolina, and you had to scrub your feet on a mat of antibacterial stuff. Like they had a mat that was
foot washing.
Yeah, a foot washing. So you scrubbed your feet and you put your mask on and you walked from me to you to your table and you took your mask off.
But don't they have like bigger stuff? Like more deadlier diseases down there than just
no?
COVID?
What do you mean? I mean, like the normal stuff that we got.
Yeah, but like malaria and
chikungunya's down there.
Yeah, I mean they have all those things too. But that's the thing is like the mosquito kills between 750,000 and 1 million people every year. Okay, so every year 1 million people are going to die from the mosquito, but nobody down there ever uses bug spray. Nobody down there ever worries about any of the mosquitoes, but they were worried to death about this COVID thing. Well, we had our clinic, and so every year we'll do we went to a place called Honduras, which is like on the Pacific side of the country, and it was about 10 minutes from the beach. We worked with the local church there. Rudy Ramirez is a preaching school student from Panama. He's been there for 2 years. The congregation's been there for several years, and they've actually got their own building and everything.
And Rudy, I sound like I remember him. He's pretty energetic, isn't he?
Yeah, he's he's a good guy. He's young, and I'd say he's mid-20s. He's a real good leader, and he's tall, and so he's got kind of a commanding presence just in and of his stature, and so he's a good guy. Great, he'll be a great, servant for the Lord. He's a welder. His daddy's a welder, preaches in another congregation not far from there, and so Rudy, somebody's probably got a picture of it. I'm not much of a picture taker, but he had made the door for the front of the church, and like in it, he had in the bars, like he had made a picture of a flower and then like a little bird and stuff like that. He had bent the iron and everything like that. Yeah. So he just got a lot of talents and a good guy. And we set up with the church down there, and we had a medical mission, and about 30 people from the States came with us down there, and we set up, gave them free medicine,
Estados Unidos.
From the States, and Los Estados, but we took about 30 people with us from the States down there, and
I was doing the proper noun translation.
No Español.
No
Spanish. I'm trying to work on it.
No Español.
I know. I was like,
no
right.
Sweet and low either.
Right. That's
all right. Sorry, I keep messing things up.
But our plan was to work with the local congregation and help them, get some real stage presence in the community. And they're strategically located. When you come into the city, you literally have to pass right by the church, so you can't come into the city or get out of the city without going by the church. And so the church is always going to be, you know, a passed by spot.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to get them some, you know, some FaceTime, as it were. And
I guess they, I know when we went, I got to hang up a banner on one of the medical campaigns, but I'm sure that they've been advertising for a little while.
They have, and you know, crazy thing is 2 days into it, I took all the KW crew and some of the guys from our congregation where I come from back home that went with us, and I said, we'll go get us a picture in front of the banner. Somebody hung a beer sign up over top of the banner, because I was like, the banner I thought it was right here. Maybe it's down some. And I kept driving and driving. I got plumb out of the city, and I was like, well, I reckon somebody hung the beer sign over top of they just used the banner that we'd hung across the street.
Yeah,
you know?
support.
Yeah, like, okay, now we got something to hang our beer sign on. And so that was the end of the church banner.
So walk us through an average day of your trip to Honduras. So what you know, what would you do in the morning? What did lunchtime look like?
Well,
afternoon.
You have to view this from a spiritual perspective, and if somebody if you hear the logistics of it, you may hear physical things. But this is, you know, we take two kind of approaches to this. In Acts 13, when Paul and Barnabas say, let us go back and strengthen or visit the churches and appoint elders. You know, the idea behind that was that they were going back. They were already the church, even though they didn't have elders, right? But they were going back to strengthen those churches. So, you know, we either do it on a congregation that we've started or a congregation that's been there for many years and try to give them a bump in the arm. Well, you know, this year was a unique year. This was the first post-COVID year. This is literally the only campaign done in Latin America this year. And I pushed and pushed and pushed, and you know, we went with half the people, and, you know,
Was Phil with y'all all week?
He was with us all week, and so we went with half the people, and but
because he was posting like crazy. It was awesome.
Yeah, and you know, I'm just terrible about it, you know, and I just never take the pictures.
We know.
Yeah, and so the typical day is we'll wake up in the morning and we'll eat breakfast together. Then after breakfast, we're going to have us a devo. You know, we'll sing some songs in English, sing some songs in Spanish, and we'll have a bilingual devotional, you know, whatever it is. So we're going to, you know, just a 2-3 minute bump, you know, just to get us started for the day. And then whoever needs to go, doctors, nurses, pharmacists, whatever, dentist, you know, whatever the situation is, the medical staff, if they feel compelled that they need to get in to their spot, you know, and get whatever they would need to get set up for the day, they can go. But we'll then break off and have a ladies class and a men's class.
Yeah, and so just so for the audience, it's a free medical campaign that's also evangelistically
yep. And that's the reason behind it is that so we want to
give free medicine out so we can evangelize the people.
And you got to understand, like, you may think like their health care is already free. Well, it is, but it's a complete false misnomer to this. And what I mean by it is that the actual, I can illustrate it like this. If you go to a tire shop and they deducted whatever the labor cost was from your bill, that would be the only part of any medical work that's done in Honduras free. Everything else you pay for. One time I went to a pharmacy, and Barry from up at Al Hall, up at Winchester area, he said, we're out of tongue depressors. So I go and I go to the pharmacy, and I asked the girl, I need some tongue depressors. And she said, how many do you want? Well, I said, well, how many do you have? And this girl was gone for like 15 minutes. And I'm just like, what is going on here? Well, she comes back and she's like, 1,563. And I was like, oh man, you forget that you pay per piece on everything. So I was like, well, I'll take them all now, you know, since you didn't count them all, I'll take them all, and we'll just use them, you know, however long it takes us to go through them. That's what we'll do. So you go to the hospital, you literally pay for every pair of gloves. You pay for every tongue depressor. You pay for every little. So if you
you don't have the $10 shop fee that you have around here.
Yep, exactly.
That's just all inclusive.
Yep, and so everything that you would use.
Man, that's a lot of charting for them.
It is, and that's how come it's free, but it's not. You're actually so it'd be like if you went to a tire shop, whatever the guy makes an hour. $25 an hour.
Yeah, you get that off your bill.
You get that off your bill, and everything else you still pay for. You know, the lug nuts or the whatever it is.
Yeah, the tires,
the valve stem. You know, the
glue that goes on the inside, all that stuff.
All that stuff you'd pay for. Well, so, and because they have this kind of system set up where being you want to be a doctor, you can go to school for X amount of time for free, but in turn, part of your residency is you'll pay back in service your time as tuition trade. And so
what does that look like? 2-3 years just working in the country?
I've asked and I get a different answer every time. So I learned to quit asking the questions. And it seems to me that it kind of it's typical with the specialty that they're going after, right? So if they're just general doctor, it doesn't seem to be as long. If they're wanting to like have a specialty like hip, bone type guys or something, that's going to be a little bit longer. And so, but it doesn't.
But either way, so medical campaign, free medicine and medical care is real appealing to the
because it's really free
because it's appealing to the locals. Yeah,
and it's not fake free. And so our idea is that we can get them in with this medical campaign. Well, my idea behind it also is that people that want to go and be evangelistic and be part of the church, this gives them an opportunity to do something that they may necessarily never been able to find a niche that they can do. So, like, I took, 2 nurses with us from the States. I took my wife and Tom's wife, Pat and Jessica. They both worked in the pharmacy. One day, the pharmacist got sick, and they just became the pharmacist. So they were filling prescriptions, right? And and it's probably just a dehydration issue with him because once he kind of slept it off, it was fine the next day. Well, and the ladies like Pat and Jessica, they switched. One day one taught, one day the next one taught, and then the last day they taught together. And so that was a good learning time for them. So you got breakfast, then you got your devotional, then you got your men's class, and we talk about the things that we need to talk about this year.
Yeah, men's class versus ladies' class, right?
Yeah, they'll call it preacher's class, and I make sure to call it men's class because by default, all the men that are there from Honduras are preachers.
Right.
And so they call it preacher's class. Well, I call it men's class so that all the dudes that want to go
can go.
Right. And so we'll have.
And everybody gets the training.
Yeah. So we talked about unity and what that means, how we can be united. Because now Honduras is in their 3rd generation of preachers. They're at the point now where, the older men in the early 90s became preachers. And then their sons became preachers, and now you've got the guys that are in the early 20s now going to preaching school coming out, and that aren't necessarily related to those guys, but they're in their 3rd generation. And so it's just like everything. There's always this tendency of separation. The younger guys aren't doing it like we did it, and this and that and the other. So I wanted to kind of bridge some of those things together with unity. So we talked about unity this week in our class. And so we start the clinic, right? And then we start, the whoever's working the line, they have a way that they got it worked out where people can get their throughput, and we'll have girls doing registration. And the big thing is right when they start registration, you're talking to them about the church. You're talking to them about, hey, we want to, separate ourselves. And I put the locals there at registration table. So every person that comes to the clinic will meet somebody from the church, guaranteed this way.
Yeah, that's great.
So y'all just have some tables. Like, what does the clinic look like? Or y'all have it set up in the compound?
Yeah, it's just they're classically they're only churches you're going to find down there are Catholic churches and Mormon churches. They're the only ones that really build churches to have buildings. Some of the Jehovah's Witnesses do or whatever, but most of the churches are just going to build a building or buy a building or something like. It doesn't look like a church classic in America,
right.
And so in
the United States, because that's still America,
right? Yeah.
I only say that because I got hammered by that whenever I was down there.
Yeah, so
they're like, "This is America too." I'm like, "Oh, yep, you're right."
Yeah, exactly. And so in the States here, everywhere's got a wall. just because of crime rate and security and everything like that. Everywhere's got a wall. So they we set the clinic up, so you come in through the door. Rudy actually made the big metal gate door. It's a big rolling door. He made the door. They come in through the door, come to registration, kind of give you the get your name, rank, serial number scenario. You go see the nurses for triage. What's your problem?
And just so kind of people understand too, like I know that a hotel, the hotel that we stayed at before in Dan Lee was you had outside doors that could lock. Any kind of corridor that came in had metal bars that people you couldn't pass through with a lock on them. And then there was a courtyard for you to park in that had 14-foot walls with a 14-foot gate.
Yeah.
And razor wire along the top of it. It's just it's different in a third world country.
It is.
And so even the churches and most of these places will have that outer perimeter wall, so to speak.
And that's not nothing. Yeah, you
it's not unusual down there.
Why did Nehemiah rebuild the wall?
Yeah,
it
for
wasn't
security.
Yeah, it wasn't because there was these marauding bands of pirates everywhere.
Yeah,
but it's just a secured compound that way. You're just secure.
Yeah, in United States, man, get that way at some point.
That's right, but we're not there now.
We're not there yet.
And so,
but back to that men's class. I know that I grew from that whenever I went. And those were good sessions, and it's really good sometimes for. Because what I love about the brethren down there is they work together a lot, and they'll do their own campaigns at times where they'll just go out and evangelize. But sometimes it's really good for them to have somebody like Chris or somebody from the States to come in and just really help build the whole group together, and they're not just hearing the same brother talk, and you can really build a lot of. Because some of those guys too, they can, if they've been supported by, the church up here for a long time, some of the times, they can get Satan. He's really good, and you can begin that comparison game, with finances or whatever, and
that's why I talked about unity, because there's just so many facets to it, so that's why the men's class this year had to be about unity.
Yeah.
And
you probably knew a lot of that from your recon trip down in March.
Right. I told them when I came, because before I get there, I start. What was the question you asked me a while ago, Ben? Is there any what? Do I have any what?
I forgot.
Do you have any? Is there any deer jerky laying around?
Oh yeah,
in your pocket.
Yeah, you got any deer jerky in your pocket? Yeah. Well, the reason. How many times have you seen me eat deer jerky since you've been in?
Not often. You only do it for whenever you go down there.
Yeah.
And there's a reason.
Word on the street was, Chris, he had some left over. He was giving it out, from his pockets.
I did.
In the fellowship hall.
I kept, about a.
Yeah, sometimes people need pre-workouts, and Chris was giving people pre-worship.
Right. Exactly.
Pre-worship fuel.
It had creatine in it.
Yeah. Protein.
I started out our last class that night, and I said, guys, I just want you to think about something. I want you to know that the only time I really ever eat deer jerky is in Honduras. And I said, the reason why I do that is because I remember the first year I came with it, you guys ate every bit I had the first day, and I never told you. I never told you that. And so I learned that it's okay. So I started bringing it in smaller bags. So I bring 7 bags of it this time. 7 quart bags, and they ate everything but the last bag. And that's what I brought with me to Sunday. And I said, I want you to understand something, that's something that we share special together. And I'm investing the time in you with that, and that's something that only we do together now. And I said, so I need you to understand that I really think you're special people, but we need to talk about some things very important with regards to unity. And, I'm a straight shooter with this stuff, and I didn't.
And you've built a relationship with these people for more than a decade.
And that's why, I used the deer meat, the bag of deer meat. This is something, this is my street cred with you guys. And the fact that we sit around and, they were picking on me about how long my beard's got. Mm-hmm. And they said, your beard's got awful long. I said, is that so your wife can pull you? Jessica was eating lunch with me. Is that way your wife can pull me long? I said, yep, that's exactly right. But let me tell you something. my leash is a whole lot longer than you guys' are. Because most of them don't even have a beard.
Yeah.
And so it was just fun to pick with them like that. But so those classes are it's not about like me educating these stupid little natives here, right? It's about, us growing together. I would have those same classes here if we needed to have them here. Mm-hmm. And so once the clinic is going, then once the throughput starts, we send people out in the community. So people are out into the community. They're doing their thing. And, we'll send some of the preachers out. Rudy will have kind of an area that we need to canvas, and we'll send them out to canvas the area. All that stuff will happen. People coming through the clinic, if they want to have any questions about the Bible, any kind of Bible study things they need to do, we'll do that, and we'll start the process. Like if you come through the clinic and you have some questions about your faith, about the Bible, about what is the Church of Christ, we want to answer all those questions for you. So we'll have guys sitting there that are ready, and we'll start that conversation with them. And then the guys in the community, we may send guys out to the schools, to talk to the schools about them, those type of things. And we'll just work through that until lunchtime. Then we'll break and eat beans and rice and tortillas. And
then you'll have a gospel meeting every night, right?
Yep, we'll do the same thing after lunch until the gospel meeting every night. And one of the local brothers will preach there. And
so we after the break, we want to talk about some of the results and some of the highlights and stories from this trip. We'll be back in just a second.
Oftentimes, when you think about spiritual decisions in our life, we don't think about how we spend our money. We understand that managing your finances can be a huge struggle for a lot of people. And that's why we've set aside a weekend on October the 1st and 2nd here at the Kinston Woods Church of Christ that is designed to help you with basic financial fundamentals. We're going to talk about things like how to set up a budget and give you other tools that will help set you up for years to come. I want to encourage you to join us on October the 1st and 2nd. For more information, look us up on Facebook or visit us on the web at kwchurch.org. I really appreciate your time, and I hope to see you there. Thanks again.
So, every trip has things that are special, and for me, because I've done this so many times.
How many years?
I've gone through my first passport, so more than 10, and I'd have to sit down. I don't know how many trips I've made, but a lot. And
he made 2 with me.
Yeah, but
they were special.
They're trips that I don't remember the year that I met Bob,
mm-hmm.
and I don't really remember the place that I met Bob, but I remember meeting Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I remember,
whereas for me, it doesn't all run together because I only went on 2 trips.
Yeah,
so
I remember how special it was.
I only had a first year and a last year.
Well, I'm just saying, I remember how special of a person Bob was when I met him. And so those things stick out in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that was just a tremendous blessing. A highlight for me was that I met Bob there.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. We've said this before on this podcast, but you and I forged a real strong friendship and relationship, because the 10 days that we had, 7 days, I guess, that we had, met each other and worked together. It's just all out, it's pretty much a sprint as hard as you can.
It's unsustainable.
Yeah. You think about as hard of a workout as you can and, in the field for evangelism and the heat and then it's just the push of trying to grab one more soul, put one more relationship in place, restore one more person, whatever it may be. But there's if you decide to go on a mission trip or if you're debating about it, you're going to think, wow, I wonder how much impact that I can have on people, but it'll impact your soul more than it'll impact anybody else.
Yeah, and never, you don't even start writing those checks.
Yeah.
Because, you just are never going to know, how it's going to change your life. And I'm telling you, I'm here today because of a mission trip.
Mm-hmm.
I called my wife in one of the hottest places still I've ever been on my first one. I was like, when I come home, we're going to make changes. And she said, what do you mean? I said, I don't know. I just know that I can't come down here and I mean just beat the bushes and shoot every rabbit that runs out of it all week long and not come home and do this. And you know, this is not a horn tooting, but if I had studied with and baptized several people before I went on my first mission trip, you know, but the Lord really put those on the tee for me.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? You know, they
Here's
were
your home run, bud.
Yeah, exactly. You know, exactly right. And so but after that, it changed everything. And so you know.
Well, and now the Lord, you know, when you get a little more seasoned, you can kind of see those balls that are ready to be placed on the tee, and you can help put those on the tee for another Christian for them to study with. I mean, we've had those conversations.
Absolutely. And so, and that's the blessing. And so, you know, you figured like this week, I'll just tell you some highlights, man. Like I've tried to study with the doctors for years because part of the law down there is that if we do a campaign with the gringos, us, and that's not a racial term, that's just what they call us, you know. And we're fine with it.
They call me muy loco gringo.
And so, if you have a campaign, you have to have a local native doctor. So for years, I studied with them doctors at nighttime. You know, when they would get done, and if they were a war slap out, you know, I won't want to drag them out for 2 hours. You know what I mean? And they got.
Well, there's one sister who had been a member of the church for years.
Yeah, and so it's Dr. Norma.
Yeah.
Dr. Norma. So here's the way this thing went down. In San Miguel, it's a barrio outside of the capital city, Tegu. There's a brother named Elias Rogue. His son preaches in Kansas City. Yeah. They started the only Latino church in Kansas City.
Elias, what's his son's name?
Rogue.
Yeah, okay.
R-O-G, it looks like Rogue, but it's Rogue. And so Elias Sr. preaches in San Miguel. San Miguel, they have a clinic in their congregation. Well, the you know, in like an extension of their church house, you know, on the end of it is a clinic. And they use that kind of like we use our benevolence ministry for serving the community and preaching the gospel. Yeah. So as time passed, you know, Elias and Norma, you know, they just kind of parted ways. And Elias got a lady that is a member of the church that owns her own clinic right up the street. And I mean, it's as far as from here to, you know, Canes from here. I mean, less than a mile. Yeah. You know, walking distance, 3-4 minutes, right? Well, she's got her clinic humping all the time. It's just a regular doctor's office day in and day out. Well, so she can't come to San Miguel, but she said, I know a lady. So she gets another lady who's actually a neighbor of the church. That's a doctor. Sylvia comes over. She works.
Smart.
That's Christians doing it. Christians ought to do it, and that's all it is. And so you think about that. You know, like there's a blessing now. You get to touch another soul. So she's been coming over there for a year. Elias said, since she's been working on Tuesdays over there for a year. Elias, when he got to the clinic the first day, he said, "Brother, I need to talk to you." I said, "Okay." He said, "Our doctor is not a Christian, but because of Tuesdays, you know, when she does the work on Tuesdays," he said, I just don't have a lot of time. I try to give it a bump, and she has started to come to the assembly, you know, the church with us. And he said, so can you study with her? So I've studied with them all the time, so they just remember that, you know, that I study with the doctors. So I took a different approach this year. I said, I thought about our kids, you know, our Southern, you know, you guys got your SCSC shirts on, and I thought about all the kids that go to Southern that abandon their faith. So I asked her, I said, could you help me with something? And she said, what's that? I said, well, it's always different when I study with somebody that's highly intelligent. And I'd like to know if you could help me, because we have so many kids that come to our local university that abandon their faith. So I'd like to talk to somebody that's highly intelligent, that obviously believes in God. And I'd like to ask you some questions. If this is how I could approach these kids from this scenario. She said, oh, that would be great. Well, I started this. I had a Bible study with her, right?
Take note, people.
Well,
take some notes. Go ahead.
And Chris. I just started through the process, right? And why do you believe in God? And she's like, well, you know, it's interesting. You know, I have all this academic knowledge that we learned. And she said, but when you start cutting people open and looking inside of them, you can't deny that somebody had to make that. Yeah, and so I said, but don't they
it didn't just evolve or bang into place.
That's right. And I said, don't they teach evolution here? She said, they do now. They teach evolution in their schools. And so they're even teaching the same garbage here that our kids are learning. Well, I said, so what's different for you? And I said, because a lot of people are not going to look at that and steal from the academic knowledge, as you said, and said somebody did it. She said, well, there was a tipping point. And I said, what was it? She said, my son, this is a crazy story, now Sylvia's the same age as me, right? She's like a year older than me. She's born in 80. And
52.
and Holden. And so Sylvia's born in 80. I'm born in 81. She's 42. I'll be 41 this year. So Sylvia, she says, my son was born, who's 16 now, and when he was born, he aspirated his meconium. And the only reason I know what that is because Aiden did the same thing. So she's telling me the story. Jessica's sitting there with me because it's just me and her that night. Right?
But Jessica's about ready to squall.
Well, Jessica, this is an all Spanish conversation.
Oh, okay.
And Jessica's picking up about half of it. And I said, so I'm listening to Jessica's like, are you getting this? She's like, I don't know every word, but I know the story. Because she knows what she's explaining is the same thing that happened to Aiden, our oldest son. So she's telling the story, and I'm hearing the echo of my own, right? And I said, can I ask you, I said, why did that make you believe in God? She said, well, when he was just at the brink of not making it, and I just prayed and prayed, and I said, Lord, please help me. Please help me. And it's a miracle. He has 0 disabilities, 0 brain, neurological issues, everything completely fine. I said, there's not going to be many people that can tell you this. I said, but I went through the same thing. I said, my son, he had a little spot in his lungs about the size of a dime. That was the only usable spot of his lungs, and they had to oxygenate. They had to raise the oxygen level so much that one little spot could supply the enrichment for his whole body. His oxygen content was so high. And I said, we went through the same thing. I said, can I ask you a tough question? And she said, what's that? And I said, what if you didn't make it? I said, you're basing it on the fact that God exists because he made it. I said, what if you didn't make it? Then there's the silence. So I said, can we talk about how our faith can be rock solid without external things affecting it? And she said, now we got to.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did as we started this process. Well, she said, I've been coming to church at San Miguel, and, they're going to preach, God's way to save man. And she said, I've heard these things about baptism. She said, I've been baptized too. She said, but there's just a lot of things that are confusing to me now because, there's a lot of Bible that I hear now, but, and it's not, you got to think from the pulpit, it's not designed to give you all these things, one person, what I mean? Right. You got to strengthen the congregation.
It's the number 8 shot.
Yeah. And so I said, let's talk about it. And so, and this is one of the times like you cash in chips and hope that it plays. And so we talked about, I said, have you ever brought somebody back to life? And I don't even know the word in English, but revivir is revive in Spanish. I said, revive them. I don't know what you'd call it, but you hit them with the paddles, I don't know what that's called in English. So I couldn't even translate it in Spanish. But I said, have you ever done that before? She said, yes. I said, do you remember the people that you did it to? She's like, well, yeah, I mean, I think so. She's trying to
process.
Yeah, like maybe. I remember doing the action, but I don't necessarily remember the person. I said, do you think that person could tell that story? She said, what do you mean? I said, do you think the person that died and came back to life would know that he died and came back to life? Do you think that he'll tell that story of him being born again? She said, yeah. I think it's probably a monumental moment for him. Because she said, I'm just not sure that I was baptized for the right reasons. So that's what I started with, was that person that you brought back to life, they'll always remember the moment they came alive again. And that's what I used to teach her.
Yeah, because that's the heart of the gospel is if you can't see this monumental change, that something is totally different now.
Then it was just some kind of religious practice you went through.
Yeah.
And this is how, I mean, like I was teaching, I teach a new converts class generally every night. And I was teaching it, and there was a young lady that was working at the registration table. Her name was Noelia. And Armando, one of the preachers came. He said, "Hey, I need to get the keys to the van. I didn't drive my truck today. I rode the bus." And I was like, "Okay, well, whatever." And
I know how Armando drives.
Yeah, right.
I've rode shotgun with him.
Yeah, well, so I said, "Armando, I even told him, like, you're not on the insurance. Just FYI." He's like, "Well, we're just going to the beach." I was like, "Okay, well, what are y'all going to the beach for?" He's like, "Well, Noelia wants to be baptized." I was like, "In the ocean?" He was like, "Yep, she wants to do it in the ocean." I was like, "Well, that's kind of inconvenient, ain't it?" And I was like, "We got the little pool thing." And he was like, "Well, that's what she wants to do." Well, here's a cool story. This girl's 13, all right?
I think I saw a picture of her on Phil's page.
Okay, so, we got a picture of her when she's...
Which I also saw like 17 other people.
We got a picture of her when she's 2.
Oh, neat.
At a campaign like 10 years ago, right? And so she was there. Her family's been there the whole time. All her family's been faithful. So you're sowing seeds. She's 2, right? And all the kids' class singing the little Nino songs. I asked her in Bible class, the new converts class, I said, "So tell me, why the ocean? What was so special about the ocean?" And she said, this was cool. She said, "It's been a lot of people in the pool this week, and we've got used to seeing them there." She said, "I don't ever want to, in my mind's eye, see this as a casual thing." Mm-hmm. She said, "I went to the ocean because I was the only one that did that, and I don't ever want to forget that was my beginnings."
And that's coming from a 13-year-old.
13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And, I mean, like, you'd think you're talking to a 30-year-old person here. Mm-hmm. And so our new converts class, like, she was the most mature one out of all of them in there, and the youngest. And it was just an amazing thing to watch. And,
and that's kind of seeing that generation of people coming up in the church, and they're seeing their families being evangelistic, and their families like Christianity. They have validation to it, not just because of evidence-based things, but because there's fruit-based things with their family. And that's one reason why so many kids are leaving the church, because it's not real to their mom and their dad.
And that's why water always finds its own level, Bob. You can preach and you can tell and you can, this is what we need to do, and you ought to. None of that will ever come true until you're doing it yourself. I mean, it just will never be true.
Yeah, I was always impressed with how little Hector,
Yeah,
and his. The fact that, his age, but yet, I'm not saying he was the most mature kid or whatever, but, the maturity level and certainly his knowledge of the scriptures and things is just.
I'm telling you, man, it's a blessing. And there was a guy there this week, and I kept thinking about this verse in 2 Timothy 2:2, that "You therefore, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus, and the things that you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men, who will be able to teach others also." So there was a guy with us this week that was converted from our podcast.
Oh, neat.
So
it's awesome.
So just think about that. There was a guy there this week that I put him with Tom, right, at the beginning of the week. And
who's from Honduras?
No, he's from here.
Okay.
Every time you sit down there, you bang it. Okay. It makes a big bang noise. I hear it on our headphones. So the guy, I put him with Tom, and it's so, Tom, I mean, he's just going to latch on.
Oh, yeah.
And at the end of the week, Tom was saying, "I hope I didn't wear him out." And Matthew,
Tom's like a python.
Yeah.
He's just going to.
And Matthew was saying, "I hope I didn't wear Tom out." And I was just, inside, I was just laughing, like.
He didn't wear Tom out, but the ladder did this morning.
Yeah.
That's right. And so, Tom, it was a great thing to watch one of our shepherds, take somebody that wasn't even really one of his sheep, but he saw somebody that really wanted to get after it, and he worked with him and worked with him and worked with him all week long. And listen, by the end of the week, Matthew was teaching people himself. I mean, he was teaching people the gospel himself.
And you can just, you talk about earlier the value in going.
Oh, dude.
And so if there's anybody watching that, or one of the viewers that wants to go next year, tell them the process of how to go with you.
Yeah, and so our plan next year is, right now, is this may be the time to go ahead and pull the Band-Aid off, but, I've talked with the guys at Lamb for several years about doing our own campaign work, and, I've done this so long, in partnership with Lamb that I just think that we can do it ourselves. Not that I don't appreciate what they're doing or that they're doing wrong things. And I don't mean to, if any of that sounds like I have any animosity towards them, I don't. I highly respect them. But I just think that we can plan it to suit our own circumstances, if we do that way. And whoever wants to come with us certainly is welcome to come with us. And so if you'd like to come with us and be a part of our team, reach out to us here on the podcast. You can check us on Facebook or kwchurch.org/unscripted or podcast. I can't remember. What is it? kwchurch.org /
unscripted, or you can just contact us through the church email.
Yep. Just go to kwchurch.org.
Reach out to us on Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook and
when do you have a time frame of when you're kind of going next year?
We're going to certainly try to suit it to be our kids here, and so because we want our kids to go next year, and my oldest and Bob's. I don't know, Bob, how you feel about this, but our kids may be old enough now to where they can go too, and. But it's just a different environment. You got to be.
And you don't have to know Spanish to go, right?
No. I mean, I don't even. Everybody thinks Chris is so fluent in Spanish. And, I remember by the end of the week, I was translating a prayer.
He is.
Listen, I was translating a prayer for one of the preachers, and I just got to the point I was like, I'm so thankful for Romans 8 and the Holy Spirit can make all this stuff right, Lord. Just thank you. I was so tired. I couldn't even think through what was being said. I mean, just flat about to fall over.
That ain't got to do with his translation skills. That's the fact that he's wore out.
But I'm just saying this is the thing, is that, there's a place for you.
Yeah. And so just kind of a little bit of fruit on that. Also, and you don't have to give exact numbers, but can you give us kind of some rough numbers of, conversions, restorations, and then about how many patients y'all saw at the clinic?
So typically speaking, we're going to see about 200 patients a day. You give away about 1,000 prescriptions a day.
Man.
So roughly 1,000 patients a week, and
and you're going to probably
5,000 to 6,000 prescriptions.
You'll have 350 Bible studies, something like that, by the end of the week.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. Let's see here. There were 10 baptisms. I know, Tom. There was one the last hour. We're loading the bus. An old man wanted to obey the gospel, but he has prostate cancer and he has a tube. And so we had to get the doctors off the buses, the nurses off the buses to kind of
trip's not over, y'all.
Seal him up good, healthy or whatever, so the whatever wouldn't get in what I don't even know what they were sealing up. I didn't even understand, it's just way out of my league. And so they went in a special room, and the blessing is that we saw 10 people born again, right? We studied with one person that was restored. Two people were restored. I know that. But you can't justify this with a spreadsheet.
Oh no.
It's so hard.
Right.
We like to, the reason why we want to know numbers, I don't believe it's so that we can feel like we're successful. I don't think that's why we do that. We like to see numbers so that we can kind of wrap our minds around, when we start talking about these things, what is it kind of nebula? How does it come to fruition? What does it look like, in the end? And so, you're going to see hundreds of patients a day. You're going to see hundreds of kids a day. You're going to see hundreds of people working, needing help. You're going to see dozens of members of the Lord's church teaching the gospel. And you got to remember that everything done with the heart of evangelism is evangelism. Mm-hmm. So it's not just this, with your Bible open. While your Bible open will always be the end all. There's just, faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. So you've got to get to the book at some point. But, in a week's time, we'll give away as much prescriptions as a Walmart will in a month. Mm-hmm. We'll see in a week's time, an overran clinic in America. I mean, no clinic there's not a walk-in clinic that's going to do 200 patients a day anywhere.
Yeah, right. And somebody, George Roth, me and him were doing some work together last week, and he texted Dan. He's like, "How's it going?" He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Crowd control."
Yeah.
And
and you think about somebody our Dan. Dan Duda, I mean, he's shown like a star. Mm-hmm. And they're just going through and I could tell them, guys, you can't fix everything that's wrong. You just got to get us going with what we need fixed right now.
Yeah.
And
it don't have to be a 15-year fix.
Yeah, they just got, it's a swamp fix. And they were perfectly fine with that. And I mean, we had another guy come with us that wasn't a member of he wasn't a Christian until he went on the campaign, but his wife wanted him to go. He wanted to go. His wife encouraged him to go. His mother-in-law was with us as a
medical team person,
nurse. And, the first night there, I said, hey, a couple of us guys like to get together and, just do some things to strengthen our faith. And he said, is it any way that I can have a conversation with you privately? And I was thinking, that's all I wanted anyways.
That's the goal.
Yeah, that's the goal. And
it was awesome hugging him Sunday where you've become a Christian. And
I'm telling you,
back
man.
here at church.
What is it that you say, who speaks first loses or whatever? And so we go through this process, and we study for a couple nights. And, I'm just trying myself, hold myself together. I'm tired. You're just tired, I study with the doctor, then I study with him, or I study with him, but then I study with the doctor. And I prefer to study with the doctor last because, once I go through this, all Spanish speaking day, when I'm done with it, I want to be done with it. You know what I mean? Like I want to go to bed, and I remember studying with him and real comfortable. I'm real comfortable with quiet, and I can just sit there real quiet. And he said, let's go. And I said, let's go where? He said, he couldn't finish the statement. And so we went out to the swimming pool. It had fish in it. I don't know how a swimming pool's got, there's so much chlorine in the water you can't see the bottom, but there's fish.
They're like, it's the cleanest water we've ever seen.
Yeah, but it was the cleanest water we'd ever seen.
Yeah.
That's the truth.
That's so cool. I got to announce that at church Wednesday night. He's been in my radar for the last 4 years, and
well, you primed the pump.
Well, it's just together we're more, but that's the whole other thing for like talking to people about about this and mission trips. And I wanted to leave this with people is this is, people will go, well, I'm not going to do a wedding for somebody unless they're members of the church, Well, I did their wedding ceremony for them. We'd studied, before they got married, and so had laid out the gospel for them. But then it's up to them to decide if they're going to go through with the marriage or not. Well, they got married. Well, then, he's got such a heart of gold. 2020 rolls around, these hurricanes roll through, and the one that hit Gulf Shores. And I just put it out, that we're going to go down and cut some trees. Well, he's like, I want to go. Well, that's a perfect opportunity to study, So we studied then, and I'd asked him, I said, this has been like a year and a half later. And so he works away from the church, so he doesn't get to be here all the time. He works out of state. And but I asked him, I said, have you thought more about that conversation about baptism? He said, man, I think about it every day. And I was like, man. And that's awesome. And but then, so then I can think of a lot of church leaders and a lot of campaign leaders to be like, okay, you got to be a baptized believer before you can go, on a campaign. And that's the so for if you're leading a church campaign or whatever it might be, you can still allow people to go on your mission team.
Use discretion.
You got to use discretion.
That's
absolutely.
Right. Use discretion.
And you don't want to be taking somebody who's going to be going there and false teaching. But if you can, if you know that environment can influence them.
Yeah, I mean, this is the first thing I started off with. This is a completely spiritual environment.
Yeah.
And
you meet so many. I mean, there's so many cream of the crop Christians that are there from the States.
Yep. And I told several of them, like, hey, help me out here. Mm-hmm. Help me out with this situation. And I'm just telling you, like, everybody wants to pat you on the back, good job for teaching them. I'm just telling you, it's doggone it. It's everybody.
Yeah, well, that's right. And we're just empty vessels for the Lord.
Yeah, I mean, it's everybody that does it is a part of it, and so it's never just one person. And so there's just could we tell 1,000 more stories? I mean, I could tell you I'll finish with this. Do we got enough time to say this?
You got like maybe 2 minutes.
Okay, I can do this
Tops.
in a minute. So one night, one of the brothers was preaching. And it was one of them storms that when the lightning strikes, it rattles the windows. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And he's getting up there, and there's some visitors. I'm not kidding you. And it is raining so hard you can't even hardly hear him,
Yeah.
And he says, he does this number. He's like, and I'm telling you and boom! And I mean, the lightning strikes, and it scared the heebie-jeebies out of all of us, right? And I'm telling you, Bob, he does this thing. It would look like it was staged because he's like, I ain't scared of the lightning. Boom! And doggone if he didn't do it again, right? And he's preaching along, and he said, don't let a little bit of thunder and lightning scare you because we can. And he did it, and boom! This lady gets up and marches forward. I'm not kidding you.
Yeah.
She gets up and marches forward, and like she's literally thinking he's calling down thunder and lightning.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you're not. You're really what you're doing is you're turning the world upside down. I mean, this campaign, I saw a preacher rain fire from the heavens down.
Yeah.
I saw a preacher that the magic word was misery. If he said mercy, if you want to know the mercies of God, every time he would say that word, the wind would blow and raise the tent. I said, quit saying that word because we can't get this tent to be held down. And in the middle of the night, one night, I woke up to an earthquake. It was a 5.2 earthquake that hit while we're in the middle of our campaign.
Man.
And so I've seen heaven and earth move on a campaign, but nothing moves like the gospel does. And so that's where the real change comes. So if you want to be a part, we'd love you to have and come be a part with us.
This is the Unscripted Podcast.